Hey guys, TC Made with TC Gaming. Wanted to bring you a getting started video for ACF sample 1.3 and also some new Synty users who are going to be working with some of the modular character packs. Wanted to run through the process with you of getting your Synty assets loaded into ACF and up and running. There's several different ways to do this. I'm going to go through what I think is probably the simplest way to at least get you familiar with the project and the process. You can always go back and change things later. What you will do is right click. Now I've extracted the file out here, ACF sample 1.3 to a Synty folder. And you right click on the ACF example U project and you're going to say generate Visual Studio project files. You want to make sure that you have the latest copy of Visual Studio installed, or at least 2017 or later. And you also want to make sure that you have the C++ files that you will need for building projects and things like that. Also, once you do that, you just let that run. You will also want to come in here and you're going to say open. When you say open, it should prompt you that you have some modules that need to be rebuilt as well. And you're just going to say yes with these and let it go through its process. So once that's done, we'll be loading up here into the ACF sample project for 1.3. And when that is finished, I will come back and we'll go from there. Okay, now that our project has successfully loaded, we can go in here. I typically like to switch over to this type of a view, and I also like to go to my view options and flip on show engine content and show plugin content so that we can expose the Ascent Combat Framework content directory in case we need to get down to some things here later on. Also, just a real quick tour in your ACF example project. You're going to have assets, blueprints. This is where your default characters are at for your blueprints. Also, if you go in here to the world settings and your game mode overrides, you can see here that we're using the ACF complete player blueprint, which is found here. And a couple of other ACF defaults have been set up for you. Now, what I like to do when I first load a brand new ACF project is I just like to hit the play button. I'm going to right click and I'm going to hit F11 to go out here and move around to make sure that my character can move. I hit the shift key for sprinting. I can spin around. If I hit the 1 key, it draws my sword. I can swing and see damage trails. If I hit the 2 key, I'm going to drink a potion. If I hit the 3 key, it'll pull my bow. I'm going to right click to aim, launch a couple of arrows over there, make sure I'm doing damage. And then I'm going to go over here and also make sure that I'm taking damage. Yep, I am taking damage. And then I'll run over here and pick up a couple of things and make sure that I'm able to pick those up. If I hit the I key, you can see my inventory, and everything seems to be like it's working pretty good. So I'm going to hit the escape key, get out of there. Now, making sure that everything's running, I'm going to dismiss these plugins. Now that we have everything verified that it's running, our next step is going to be to bring in the Synty Polygon assets. So as I mentioned, this is for newer users who are using the Synty Polygon character modules. So I'm going to go out to my D drive. I have a copy of that out here for Polygon, Synty Polygon Modular Fantasy Hero Pack. And if you go down into the directories here to the content, you'll find the Modular Character Folder Pack. I'm going to copy that from the content directory, and I'm going to go back to my ACF sample 1.3 content directory. I'm going to right click and just paste that in there. Now, if you installed this from the marketplace, you have a project file or whatever that's in your launcher. You can also right click on the launcher file. I'll show you here while that's loading in the background. If you're in a project in the library, you can just right click on it and say show in folder. And when you get to the folder, you can also drill down into the content directories of whatever it is that you're looking for there. So that's another quick way to get down into those. So while that's finishing up there, or actually it looks like it has finished up, we can go back in. So now we are going to go and look at our modular characters here. And what I normally like to do is I like to locate my modular character for the BP. I'm going to open that up and just verify that everything looks good in there. And I go to the viewport and I just want to check it out, make sure it's good, and that everything transferred over properly. If you go in here, you can click the random character button a couple of times. It'll cycle through all your different random options, and leave that on random and just compile, make sure it's all good, no issues. Now what I want to do is I want to go and locate the skeleton for this package, and if you look in here, you have a base SK base skeleton 01. And I also like to right click on these things and say skeleton, find skeleton to see where they're at. Now, This one's got the left arm over here. I can go over here and say each one of these looks like it has its own skeleton for all the different modular parts, but most of the stuff we want to use is on the SK character base skeleton 01. And let me just verify real quick. If you go to filters and you go into animation skeleton, it'll narrow all this down so you can see that these are all the skeletons that are in there. And again, that base skeleton is normally the one that we're going to be working with. So what I want to do is I want to go into that base character skeleton. I want to open that up, and you see that I don't have a preview mesh because this is a modular character and this doesn't have a preview mesh on it. But we're going to go into our retarget manager just the same. Make sure it's set up for humanoid. Excuse me. Now you've got a root, pelvis, spine. All these things should be mapped properly, but just verify that the names that are in the left and the right here match each other. And if you don't have a bone, then you don't have to map to that bone. I like to click on Show Advanced, and we want to verify the hands. These are always where most of your retarget videos fail. If you go in here, what Synty has done is they have 3 fingers on their characters. They have a index, a thumb, and then a third finger just called finger 0, 1, 2, and 3, left and right. And they use that same finger, that common finger, for the middle, the pinky, and the ring. So what we're going to do in here is we're going to map our middle finger is going to actually be mapped to that thing called finger, in this case 01L, 01 left. We're going to do the same thing here, finger 2 left. We're going to go finger 3 left. We're going to do the same thing for our pinky. Pinky's finger 1, 2, and 3 left. And we also want to check and verify that we have our thumb mapped properly. And it looks like our left hand is good, so we've got our index, our finger mapped to the middle ring and pinky, and then also a thumb there. We don't have any lower arm or upper arm twist bones, and we can go through and map the right hand now, finger 1, 2, and 3 to the right there. Over here, we're going to just scroll down a little bit, and we're going to find our middle goes to finger 0, 1 right, finger 0, 2 right, and finger 0, 3 right. Excuse me, we'll do the same thing for the pinky, finger 0, 1, finger 0, 2, and finger 0, 3. And we scroll down a little bit further and verify our thumb. Again, no lower arm twists, and everything else in here should be good. And what we want to do now that we have that, I like to go in here and I like to say save. And I take this bone mapping file, and I'm just going to call it Synty bone mapping. And I'm going to save that in my project. And the reason I do that is because if I have another character that I bring in that has to be rigged, I can just go in here to load that file, and it'll automatically map all these things back. For example, if I were to clear all this out, there's nothing in here. But if I go in and I load that bone mapping file, it puts everything back in there for me. So that's a nice little tip. You can also locate that file and save it externally so that if you have other projects, you can use it on the same thing. If we want to see the character, an easy thing is just go here to character bones and say all hierarchy, and it'll show your character. That way you can verify what pose it's in. And by holding down the Alt and the left mouse button, I can pan around and kind of look at that character's position, make sure he's in a pretty decent straight T-pose. You can see there he only has the 3 fingers I mentioned earlier. That's the thumb and the index and the third finger, finger 0, 1. So we want to also just double check, hit view pose a couple times, make sure that nothing pops up in there. And we can hit save. The other thing I want to do is I want to go out to the options and hit show retargeting options. I want to make sure that our root and pelvis are animation and animation scaled, and everything else is set to skeleton. If these are not set this way, what you can do is you can go down, you can right click on one of these and say recursively set the translation retargeting skeleton, and then just check to wherever that stops and go and put the rest of it on there. Okay, so that will fix some of those issues in case you have them. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to look for our ACF character. So let's take that skeleton off of there for a second. And we're going to go to our default pawn class, hit that little magnifying glass. It'll take you right to this ACF complete player blueprint. If I double left click that, this is the main guy that we're using. So we just want to find his skeletal mesh. We're going to hit the magnifying glass to browse in the background. Close this file. Now I can right click on him and go skeleton, find skeleton, and locate the mannequin file that is actually being used by ACF in this project. If I double left click to open this, I can go to the retarget manager, verify that he's set up as a humanoid, and look at his bone mapping to make sure everything's okay here. Now, one of the things I'm going to do is, as I mentioned on the Synty characters, they don't have any of the twist bones on them. So when I go to show advanced in here, I want to take those twist bones and verify that they're not on here and targeted towards this character. I don't want to target things that don't exist between the two skeletons. In here, we also see that this character is in an A pose and the other character is in a T pose. That will cause problems, so we have to fix it. Double check by hitting the view and hide pose button, and you can see there that in this case I had probably done something with this before to put him in a T pose, but let's assume for a second that he was in this pose and you had to fix this manually. What you would do, easy thing, is to go back to the skeleton tree and try and find his upper arm and his lower arm on the left hand side. So if I go up here and say upper arm right, I can take this and I am just going to grab this top bar here. I've got the select and rotate object selected. I'm going to take the top of this. I'm going to move this arm up 50. I'm going to go to his lower arm. I'm going to move that down 10. I'm going to grab the bottom part and move it back 30. And I'm going to take his hand and move his hand. That's his index finger. Don't do that. You just want to get the wrist, or the hand rather, and move that hand up 10. Now, if I hold the Alt and the left mouse button down, you can see that what I'm doing basically is I'm just straightening his arm out the best that I can here. Okay. We could spend a lot of time if you wanted to going through each of these little subtle bones, but I've found that if the targeting is, if it's close and the names are good, usually it's not that big of a deal. So we want to go over here and get the upper arm on the left side and do the same thing. We're going up 50. Lower arm is going to go down 10, back 30. And then same thing with that hand. We want to bring that hand up 10. And then I'm just holding down the Alt and left mouse button again to verify that he's in a better T-pose position. Now that I have him T-posed, I want to go to Retarget Manager, and I want to go to Modify Pose, Use Current Pose. That stores this value in here. I also want to verify that in the preview scene settings I have a preview mesh assigned, which I currently do, so we're good there. Now what we can do is we can go ahead and we can retarget from the ACF primary characters blueprint to our Synty character so that we can just use the controls and the things that came with ACF right out of the box. So the easy way to do that is to go and find, again, the default pawn class. I'm just going to hit the magnifying glass, go to the ACF complete player blueprint, open it up. And if I scroll down in here, I'll see an anim class called ACF sample anim instance blueprint. Again, I can hit the magnifying glass to locate that in my file folder structure. Another easy way to find that if you're looking for it is if you just hit the ACF example top folder, it's right there. Now I can take this file and I'm going to right click on it and say retarget anim blueprints, duplicate anim blueprints and retarget. And you see that I have only one option in here that's got a similar rig. I have the SK character base 01 that's from our modular characters modular parts file. Now I do not see a preview over here, and that's because this particular character is a skeleton only and doesn't have a mesh assigned to it. Not a big deal. We're just going to go ahead and assume that we've already checked all this out and we had a good retarget setup. And what we can do now is I don't like to put any prefixes, suffixes, or replacements in here because it makes things harder to remap later if you have to. I do like to change the directory though, so I'll hit change. I want to go out to my modular character folder, right click on it and say new folder. And I use RT underscore anims as the name of where I put stuff. So for me, it just stands for retarget anims. And I'm just going to say OK. And now that I have that mapped out to that file folder, my autosave just kicked in. So we'll go through that one more time. Retarget anim blueprints, duplicate, highlight the character, change the path. Path's already going to be there this time, so we just highlight it and hit OK. And we're going to just verify that we have our options set as shown here on the screen, and we're just going to say retarget. If we give that a second, it basically will go and grab all of the data that we need and bring it over to that RT anims folder for us. Once that's all done, we're going to go up here and do a file, save all, and let it save everything that we've just done. Okay, now what we should be able to do is if we go back out to our ACF example, and you can either go into the the blueprint character folder and find that ACF complete player blueprint, or you can just click it from here. It'll take you to the same spot. What we want to do is we want to take this complete player and open it up, and we're going to go also now, and we're going to go and find our Synty Polygon character blueprint that's in here. So we go to modular characters, and there should be a modular character blueprint. We're going to open that up as well. So now we have both of these open. The reason we're opening these, I'm going to open this in the full blueprint editor so we can see what's going on in here. Really not much happening in here because everything's actually inherited from a parent character class called ACF sample player blueprint in this project. So what I want to do is I want to do the same thing to my BP modular character, and I'm going to go to his event graph, and I want to show you one thing that's important about this when you're working with ACF. Because ACF uses a lot of inheritance for classes and things like that, what you'll want to do is stretch this event begin play back, and you're going to want to right click on that and say add call to parent function and stick a parent call in between these two, and just do that as just a regular old practice just to make sure that everything gets passed through all the other blueprints that are inherited. The other thing we want to do is we want to reparent this thing so that it picks up and adopts all of the things that ACF needs to use in your sample here. So if we click on the ACF complete player BP, we see that he is a parent. He has a parent class of ACF sample player BP. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to say, you can do it one of two ways. You can either say file, reparent blueprint, or you can come over here to the class settings and pick the parent class from right here. I'll do it here. We want to say ACF sample player BP. So over here, we're just going to say ACF sample player, and it should pull up the sample player BP. And we're going to hit that button, and we're going to let it retarget everything, or reparent everything rather. If I collapse this now, you'll see that I now have all the different little components and things that come with ACF, and you should be able to compile with no errors, and everything looks good so far. Now that our character is a ACF child, we can go to the mesh for this, and under our skeletal mesh, we already have the SK character base 01 here is our thing, which is fine. Because what happens in this whole thing, I'll explain in 1 second, but we want to go to the anim class. I'm going to go to viewport. And in our anim class, we're going to have two files that are named the same here for our ACF sample anim instance because we made a duplicate. Now you have an easy choice here. You just click the first one. If it happens to start animating your character, that's the right file. If it's not the right file, I'll show you what would happen if you pick the wrong one. It'll just put you into a T-pose. So if I go and grab that, my character will be T-posed. Even if I compile, nothing's going to happen. That's an indication that this is not the right file for that character. You could have renamed this also when we did the retargeting, but that's okay. Now that we have that set up there, and it looks like everything's working out just fine, the only other thing that we have to do, other than setting up some sockets and things like that, is we can now take our BP modular character, highlight that, and come over here to default pawn class and just hit this little arrow, and it'll change it so that your BP modular character is the new character for the default class in this level. Now if I hit play, you'll see that I am the Synty Polygon character, and I should be able to run around just like before. If I hit the shift key, I can sprint, and I can also hit the alt key twice and jump. And that's pretty much it. Now because I'm randomized in here, I'm going to end up as a random character every time I alt P. However, the one thing we notice is we don't have any weapons on this character. So we're going to go in here to our modular character, and we're going to set up some sockets and also some weapons. The first thing with that is under the equipment component. You come in here and you'll see available items slots. These are the default slots that come with that sample player inheritance, and all we need to do down here is under starting items. We're just going to hit the plus button. We expand this out, and we're going to go in here and pick a couple of item classes. So the first one's the ACF sword. We're going to take one of those. We're going to come down here and expand this one out, and we're going to say we want the ACF bow. And we can also hit it one more time for starting items, and we can expand this out. And I think that there's a class in here that's called something like ACF Potion, maybe. ACF Potion Consumable, maybe. It's probably the ACF Consumable. I don't think there's a potion after. Oh, Health Potion right there. So we'll grab the ACF Health Potion, and I think we'll just give ourselves like 3 of these. Now, if we compile again, we can go out here and check it, but what we're going to find out is that we don't have the weapons in our hand. But if you hit F11, you'll see that they are on our character. They just happen to be at the bottom. And if I hit the left mouse button now, it'll go into the equipping action because the weapon is there, but we don't have sockets to actually hold that yet. So in order to fix this, what we're going to do is we're going to go and locate the skeletons for both of these. Now we know from before, because we looked it up, that our modular parts file here, we go and filter by skeleton again, that we have this SK character base 01 skeleton is the skeleton for our character. So we're going to bring that on, minimize this window, and now we just want to find out where the skeleton is for the ACF guy. So if we go to ACF characters here and find this ACF complete player blueprint again, we can double click that, go to the mesh, find the mesh there. I'm going to minimize this out. Right click on this and say skeleton, find skeleton, and open this up. Now I have both skeletons in view. And what we're going to do is go to the skeleton trees of both of these characters. And for the UE4 mannequin skeleton, we have these sockets over here that we want to put on our character. And then we're going to have to move them around a little bit because typically there's a 90-degree switch. And also, since our character is a slightly different size, excuse me, we have to relocate a couple of things. But we're going to take the shield. I'm going to hold down the control button, left click on each of these. I want to hold down the left control button again, and I'm just going to left click on each of these sockets all the way down. Holster, bow, all these different ones. And the reason that these are here is because each weapon class and category has different attachment points sometimes, and it just, it's easier to have other sockets. The way that ACF works, you can actually tell it exactly what sockets you want to land the equipment in. I'll show you that in a second. So here's copy selected sockets, copy selected sockets from there. Then we're going to go right to the SK character base skeleton. We're just going to right click, and all we're going to do is say paste sockets. Do not say paste sockets to selected bone because that'll put them in the wrong spot. But if you just paste the sockets in, provided these have the same names, they will land where they belong or within a reasonable proximity. Again, with the character size difference, you'll have to make a couple of adjustments. And I'll show you what I mean by that just by going out now. So we can save this, go out and hit play, and now we will have the items on our character. You see the swords there and the bows in front of us because the socket is in the wrong spot. If I hit the left mouse button, you'll also see now that I've equipped my sword, but it's backwards. It will do damage like that, but it is backwards. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit escape on that. And we're going to go back out here and go to our character base, and I will show you how I do this. Maybe not the best way, but it's the way I do it. So I'm going to close the mannequin skeleton. And we're going to go in here and we're going to find the single hand weapon socket, which is where our character equips the sword. Let me rephrase that. It's where the character uses the sword that is in the equipment slot. I'm going to right click on here and say add preview asset, and we're just going to type in, oops, don't do it that way. Right click on here and say add preview asset. Click up here in the search asset box and type in sword. We're going to get this SK blade dragon sword. And we can see that that's facing in the wrong direction. So again, with our select and rotate objects tool selected, we just grab this bottom one and we're going to rotate that socket 90 degrees. Normally 90 degrees gets you pretty close. Now we can also see pretty easily looking at this, and I also know because I've done this a few times myself, but we can also see that the hand for this character is not quite lined up the way that we would want that on the sword. And so another thing you can do is grab that single hand weapon and just go ahead and rotate that around a little bit more so you get it to where you think it might look pretty good. Grab your tools here and you can rearrange how this is laid in there. Kind of get it, somewhere in the middle. And we're going to save that. We can just go out here and hit play. And we'll see now when we pull the weapon if that looks better. And parts of it look better. It's facing kind of in the right direction now. And we just want to get it underneath the hand a little bit better. So if we go in here, go back to that window again, and we can do a couple of tweaks with that. So I'm going to hit the Alt key, left mouse button, come around this way, zoom out a little bit, and then I'm going to hold the right mouse button and the D key to move over. I'm also rolling my mouse wheel towards me right now with the right key, the right mouse button held down so that I can change the zoom speed on this. And you can see that we're grabbing this kind of like by the handle all the way at the end of it. So grab that SK hand weapon. We're going to slide this back a little bit. I'm going to pull this over and maybe take it down just a hair because it looked like it was a little bit outside of our range of grasp right there. So let's do that. And again, you can tweak these. There's probably better ways to do it, but it's just the way that I do it. And I'm at, actually, yeah, it looks like that socket's off. Let me see here. So I'll show you one other thing that you may want to try while you're doing that. There are other processes for that that may be better. I go to preview animation also, and I'm going to say attack, and I'm going to put my character in the sword attack thing here. I'm going to hit pause. And when I hit pause, I can see where my sword is now in relationship to that attack animation that we couldn't see earlier. And now when I zoom in on this, you'll see his hand's way back there. So now I can grab the socket for that. Where'd it go? Single hand weapon. And I can move this up to here. And maybe tweak this a little bit more that way. Take it like that. Now let's just see. See how that looks. All right, we'll save that. And we'll come out here and hit play. Hit F11 there. Still way off the edge of that thing. I think somebody covers this in a video of how to get that socket lined up a little bit better. I don't know why mine's acting that way. There must be a, there's probably a socket offset somewhere in here in the weapon. But again, this is, you know, you can, once you get this the way that you want it, it'll be fine. You can actually go back here to this one. Let's just verify that I have the correct single hand weapon. Single hand weapon. And we can look at the details and find out exactly where this is. And I can just right click on here and say copy the relative location. Go over here and details and paste the relative location. And we can do the same thing for the other two spots there for relative rotation. I think that the rotation's okay. It was just the one piece of it was wrong. We can try it though. We'll paste that in. Yeah, that's wrong. That went back to where it was before. So I'm gonna hit edit undo for that. But we'll leave the we'll leave the relative location the way that I just moved it there. I think that may have adjusted it. Probably when I swung it around, I wasn't paying real close attention to where it came from. See if that's better. Nope, still above the hand. But now it looks like it's a little bit better off. It just needs to go straight down some. Just needs to come down underneath of the hand a little bit. Wonder, let's try this. I'm gonna hit Alt P. I'm gonna hit play again, and let's see if I can go. I'm gonna hit Control, or not Control F1. Hit Shift F1 to get out of here. I'm gonna hit eject, and now that I've ejected, I'm still able to view the scene. I believe if you do it that way, you can actually come in here while this is running live. Where's this skeleton at? Modular character, modular parts, base skeleton. I think I can adjust the socket while he's on the run. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm going to pull this down like that. Then I can actually go in here and I can kind of tweak this while he's actually holding it and I can see it in the window. A little dark, but you get the idea. And I can also rotate this a little bit more. Turn the sword over some. Maybe more like, that's probably a little bit better. Okay, but you can adjust those, and you can do the same thing with the bow socket. But that should get us in the ballpark of where we need to be. Now, it's better, but it's still not great. And I think it's, can't tell, this sword, This may be upside down, but you wouldn't use this sword anyway. Because this sword's not one of your Synty collection swords. Yeah, I'm gonna say that sword's 100% upside down. Go into his base skeleton, grab the single hand weapon, and rotate that 180 degrees maybe. Yeah, you'll just have to play with the socket arrangement on there. But again, if you hit the 1 key, that'll put that back. And then you could do the same thing with your bow. And you just go into the bow for your bow hand. And I do the same thing. First, I'm going to clear these. I'm going to say remove all attached assets. That'll get rid of that sword. Right click on here and go add a preview asset. And the bow is actually called Arco in here. So if we grab the Arco, we can see that that's actually not that bad. We're going to rotate it around like this to flatten it out a little bit. And then we just move it out. Not out, that's down. Move it out a little bit. And maybe just tweak it a hair that way. Kind of get it squared up a little bit. And let's go see how that one looks while we're holding it. So you hit the 3 key. The 3 key will give you your bow. And it's not quite in his hand. And again, these are easier to look at sometimes if you're in the animation. But that, it's hard with, on this particular asset pack, it's the toughest because you don't have a mesh to guide you. Now you could, theoretically, since this bow hand is attached to his hand L, what you could do is under the preview scene settings, or even under the preview animation, under additional meshes in here, you could go in here and find, I believe, a mesh for the, oh, you know, it might be a different name for the skeleton. So at the bare minimum, you could go under preview mesh in here, and that is hand underscore R or hand underscore L. Go to preview mesh and see if you can find hand, or see if you can find arm. Did you find an arm in here? Maybe left. Left. That's not his thing there. It's his shoulder. I was going to say maybe you could find a preview mesh in here. But I don't know what the name of that is. I have to find it out here. I would have thought you had an arm in here. Or a hand. It's the lower part of his arm. Strange to me that they don't have more of a character on there. All the modular parts. Well, we could look at it here. Let's look at this. Let's go to the modular character blueprint. And what does he have in here? He does have a arm lower left. There's his hand right and his hand left. So there is one in there. Find class in content browser. Minimize that. No, not out there. But it's got to be in there. Hand doesn't show up. It does. Hand left male. We'll do any hand. So if we grab this one here, for example, hand left underscore male, that should show up in this retarget window. Kind of off in the trail now. Hand, no, left. Might be because of the way that they built this, that they're not on this skeleton. They're not on the base skeleton. They're actually on their own skeleton. That's probably why you can't find them in there. So with that being the case, again, like I said, with these guys here, they're just hit or miss. You're gonna have to go through them and kind of get them set up the right way. I think you could do this also if you had to. Throw another idea at you. I haven't tried this yet, but I think you could also go in here, that hand left, and I think you could go in and say add component and attach another skeletal mesh on here. Should be skeletal mesh that's socketed underneath of there, and just call this like bow. And then on the bow, you can come over here and look at the skeletal mesh that goes with it. You should be able to go in here and type in Arco and find that Arco. And then if the bow hand is parented under whatever this, see, these aren't parented to anything, but you know that the bow goes under the left hand. So if you come up here to the parent and you look at, oops, hand underscore L, it's not going to let you parent to it. Nope. Won't let you do it that way. I was going to say, sometimes you can go in here and get lucky and you can move these things around inside of this editor. So you could actually pull this up and move it in here. I've done this with other assets. It just doesn't look like this is going to be one of those things where it works out real easy. But sometimes you can go and you can get these all dialed in inside of here, or get them close at least. And then from here, you could take the location transform of this, or the relative. I think there's like a relative socket location or something down in here somewhere. I guess that is the one, the only one. So you might be able to get it by doing that and tying this other property to the hand, you know. But these are just ideas. You'll have to explore these yourself and figure it out. But hopefully this helps you understand how to get started with this. Now, you'll notice that some of these characters have some odd arm placements and stuff like that. That is because of the original retarget that was in ACF. And I'll show you a little bit more about, you can fix that by just adding better animations to your skeleton. It's not the actual skeleton, it's the animation retarget. So we can talk about that in another video. But what I want to do in here real quick, I know I'm taking up a lot of time. What I was going to show you is if you go and you find this modular character, now you could also drag this guy out here and get a couple of these different characters. And these can also, now that you've got them set up, you very easily should be able to turn these into your AI characters by putting them on the other AI classes that are in here. But I wanted to show you on here real quick. When I hit the play button, see, these guys randomize, right? So every time I go back in here and play, they're going to be different characters, right? So if I hit escape, Alt P, different characters, Alt P. So this is great if you want some random NPCs in your world, right? But let's say you like a character a certain way. What you can do is you can grab that character's blueprint in the detail panel. If you go onto the modular character, you can actually come down here and you can find out what the settings are on that character right here. So for example, that is head 5, 7, so on and so forth. And as long as this isn't set up on random inside of the blueprint, you can make it so that this guy doesn't get randomized. And you can fix that inside of these by taking the randomization function and shutting it off inside of the modular character. So for example, if you go in here in that event begin play we were talking about earlier, you should be able to take that off. Or you can also set up these right here, take the random off and assign whatever you want to. So like if I go into this viewport for the character, you can also go in here and dial in numbers. Whatever numbers you change in here will apply to that character. And you can set these. I forget how many of them there are, but quite a few. But I'm making subtle changes. Let's do his head. Probably show up a little bit better if I did something that you could actually see. It's not doing it in there. Oh, you have to. It is there. Human B. I don't know. Normally that does that. I might have lied to you just now. But there's ways to set this in here by shutting off some of this randomization and then actually setting the, oh, you know what? It's probably because I went way up too high here. Should be like a like head 8. Huh? I don't know why that's locked in there. Huh. I'll play around with it and I'll see if I can figure it out. The general idea of this was to get you up and running with being able to retarget your character on here. The nature of the modular characters is something we'll have to play with. Again, you can adjust that bow socket, but what I was going to say on these ACF guys over here is if you go and grab them, ACF blueprint characters, you have a ACF ranged enemy BP, and you have a sample enemy BP here. If you just open this guy up and go to the mesh, you can now go and change this into your, whatever that base, is it called base character? And under your anim class, same thing, you can go in here and pick, under the viewport, go in here and pick the ACF sample anim instance. You can see that over there. Now the problem with this guy is he doesn't have any of the code on him. So instead of doing it this way, what we can do is we can just find out the things that make this an AI. So here's an ACF sample AI BP. I think if we go to ACF sample enemy and drill up to that parent, there's just an ACF AI character BP as the parent of that. So you should, in theory, be able to go to your character under modular characters. You should just be able to duplicate this guy here and call him random AI. Oh, all right. Interesting. Didn't mean to have that second one. But if you go into the random AI blueprint, my computer's running really slow right now. Probably because of the length of this video. I think I'm about to crash. My game running or something? None of my mouse buttons are responding to anything. My modular character opens up just fine. This character failed to load. Let's delete that. Probably because I deleted it. Let's go duplicate asset and just do random underscore AI. Let's give it a different name. Maybe it'll work better. Okay. So under the random underscore AI, I'm saying if we go over here and we reparent this class setting to the AI, I think we said it was ACF AI character BP. There's two different types. There's ranged. We had a sample. Go back again. Let's look at our sample one so we know which one to sample or do this to. So let's do ACF sample enemy BP. ACF sample enemy is an ACF sample AI BP. Random AI will be the ACF sample AI. ACF sample AI BP. Reparent that and compile and save. Now I'm not sure that this works. I've never done this. I'm just saying in theory, you should be able to, once you have all these things retargeted, you should be able to take this random AI guy and stick him out there. Okay. So he probably just needs an AI controller. We'll go and edit the random AI guy, and let's compare him to the sample enemy BP. See this AI controller class? And is there anything else on here? Not really. They're all pretty much the same now. They're identical. So it's just the ACF. It's the pawn setting. Pawn setting. Pawn. And under AI controller class, we just have to give them a specific class, I believe. This one is set to ACF melee AI controller. We just hit this magnifying glass that just selected that in the background. Now you can come over here and just do that and it'll assign it. Okay. And we just do the other settings, disabled, placed in world. Those are both the same. Compile. Now when we hit play, does that turn him into an AI? Yes, it does. See, now he is an AI guy. And he's going to go and act accordingly. So there's our random AI dude out there fighting in the world. Oh, and those are those other two guys that I made invisible by picking them that they didn't have the mesh member in the first blueprint. So that's funny. Those guys are just for the fun of it. These guys here. So I don't know what these were set on, but these would have been on something like let's just say for the fun of it, we'll open this up, go back to the mesh. It's because these are invisible. So if we called this something like golden or whatever, we could make them the golden character, and the anim class is going to be whatever makes him move. So you can do that and compile and save. And now you have your random AI guy and those two guys there. See, now they're going to come over and they're going to get involved too. But those are your ACF guys versus your random dude here. But we can all go in here and fight this guy now. But those guys don't want to fight me because we're on different teams. I'm gonna die. Alright, well hopefully this helps you guys out. Again, just trying to help you understand a little bit about how to get your Synty Polygon assets working in here, a little bit about how to retarget into ACF and make these things work. Again, there are ways to shut these off so that they're not random, and better ways to set the sockets up and things like that. But the 90,000 foot view of this whole thing hopefully got you up and running and gives you a little bit better understanding of what's going on. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to look me up, TC Mabe. I'm in the ACF forums quite a bit. I also have my YouTube channel where you're watching this video, and a Discord channel if you want to stop by and say hi. Thanks again. Take care of yourselves and stay safe.